Hey everybody, welcome back to Finance Friday. And on today's video, we are going to feature Mr. Keith Washington. So Mr. Keith Washington is my brother-in-law and he is the owner of Boardwalk Realty. So today we're going to talk about the home ownership process. Like, how do you go about purchasing a home? What are the different things that you should do, that you shouldn't do? So I drafted up a few questions where we're going to have the expert, Mr. Keith Washington, give us some insight on those things. So first of all, thanks for joining in today on our lovely Finance Friday. So I just got a couple of questions. So first thing usually is people need to know, okay, what should my credit score look like when it comes to purchasing a home? So what are your thoughts on that, Mr. Washington?
Well, the first thing is you don't need to have an absolute perfect credit score. The basic requirements for most banks is at least a 580. Of course, the higher the better, but 580 to 620 is where you're going to get the basic pre-approvals. But more banks wants to see 620, but with an FHA product, you actually go down to at least 580.
What is an FHA product?
So FHA loan is basically a government-backed loan that's provided by banks. So it's a low down payment loan where you only have to put 3.5% down, but they have some flexibility as far as credit. So the basic requirements to qualify for FHA is at least a 580 FICO score, 3.5% down, and steady verifiable income. Those are the three basic requirements. As long as you can prove those three, you should be able to get pre-approved.
That doesn't sound too bad at all to me. So you've been speaking of lending options as far as with the FHA. What are some other lending options that folks have as well?
So, of course, you go to FHA route or you can go conventional. So some products are carried differently from different banks. So Associated Bank has conventional products where they have 0% down and grants as well. But they have their own qualifications because they don't have to follow the FHA guidelines. So those loans are good for first-time buyers. You just have to take the first-time home buyers course, and I do have lenders that I can recommend for that as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll be sure to get those lenders from you as well. Okay, so now, we talked about what credit score you have to have, what are some different lending options. So obviously you go to one of these lenders, you get a pre-approval letter, correct?
Yep.
Now, once you get the pre-approval letter, what's the next step?
Once you've determined your credit score, know how much you have to have down, got your pre-approval, the next step is going shopping. And when you start going shopping, you find a realtor that represents you as a buyer's agent. So any realtor in the state of Wisconsin can show you anything in the state of Wisconsin, no matter what company is listed with. So if you were to hire myself or someone on my team at Boardwalk, we can show you a house that's listed with First Weber, Shore West, Coldwell Banker, etc. So the first step is having the pre-approval. So once you get through that process, so once you do find a house, you can basically, when you write that offer, the seller requires that pre-approval. And having that pre-approval, you know exactly what your finances option is going to be, your estimated monthly payment, all those extreme details, so you know exactly how much you can afford. So that's why it's essential to have your pre-approval first before even starting the home buying process.
Gotcha. Now, when it comes to selecting a realtor, obviously you can't take on the whole world.
Yeah.
You can take on most of it, but not the whole entire world. So what are some of the qualities folks should look for in a realtor?
So number one, to find a realtor, you start with family and friends. Like a lot of people who's been through the home buying process. A realtor's biggest core base are referrals. So if I were to sell you a home and you had an astounding process, you're going to tell your friends and family, like, hey, go to my guy Keith, he'll take care of you. But the qualities you want to look for is someone who has your back, that actually wants to have your interest at heart, to get you the best deal possible. A house is worth what the buyer and the seller is willing to agree upon. So no matter if the house is worth $100,000, if the buyer's agent that you signed on with is going for your interest, then you shouldn't have nothing to worry about.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds good. But obviously, hit up Keith Washington if you all have any realtor needs. He's the man.
Yeah.
All right. So now we've selected our realtor. We found the house, per se. And now it is time for the home buying process where essentially, let's say the offer has been approved. What funds do you need at this point before you even get to the final end where you close the deal?
So the hard part is getting pre-approved and getting all of that stuff. The harder part is finding a house, and the last hurdle is getting through what is called contingencies. Basically is your checks and balances to make sure that you're buying a house that's sound. So the three basic contingencies that most realtors include are the inspection contingency, the appraisal, and the financing contingencies. And it comes in that order. So the first one is having the home inspection. Of course, then that's you hire an independent third party to evaluate the property, make sure that you're getting a house that's not a lemon in a sense. So of course, it's all based on opinion, but of course, my specialty are first-time home buyers. So a good buyer's agent is going to hold your hand all the way through the process. The downside is you have to pay for those. Anything attached to that property as far as inspections or appraisals have to come out of your pocket.
So what those typically run people?
So a home inspection, depending on if it's a single family, duplex, 4-family, anywhere from $250 up to $400, give or take. Of course, all realtors have a good referral base for home inspectors, referral base for contractors, and anybody else to complete that work. But usually around $200, $400, I would say, is a good range for inspection, because that's the first step. Of course, an appraisal is ordered directly from the bank, your lender, and they facilitate that charge as well. So it's good to have that 3.5% saved up, but an additional 2% just for the extras to cover the inspections and appraisals and other stuff.
Okay, so definitely have some money before you get to the closing table.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there's things that you have to pay for, such as the inspection and the appraisal.
Yep. Unless you've actually contact a good lender and they actually have the grants and available that may be able to cover your closing costs as well. So closing costs can be negotiated and paid for by the seller. The seller just can't help with the down payment. But you can get down payment assistance from grants, from family, from other resources, but having a skilled and competent lender can definitely put you in the right direction.
Awesome. And as far as grants, are there any that you are off the top of your head aware of?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a few grants, but the UCC.
What's the UCC?
So some grants are available like through U.S. Bank. U.S. Bank partners up with UCC, which offers first-time home buyers grants as well. So, of course, Associated Bank has their own in-house grant as well, which is most of these grants are forgivable as well.
Meaning you don't have to pay it back.
Yeah, free money.
Awesome. No, keep going.
I see you taking notes.
Yeah.
So as far as those grants, off the top of my head, of course, talking to the lender definitely puts you in the direction as far as more grants. But us as realtors, we definitely have a handful of grants that we know off the top of our head. Like U.S. Bank has the American Dream Loan, which offers which offers a lot of down payment system and other options that a lot of buyers wouldn't qualify for.
Awesome. That is awesome. Okay. Sorry. So as we're walking through this process now, what are some major pitfalls you see happen during the process where they're literally, everything, they've got their inspection, they got their appraisal, and now it's kind of like that waiting period while the bank is finalizing everything. What are some things that people do to hinder or to slow down the process? What are those pitfalls?
I have stories for days.
Okay.
Of buyers and clients who derailed the deals because of the main thing is once you have your pre-approval, people go shopping. They have their credit they've been working on their credit, they get pre-approved, they're like, hey, I'm at a 650. Now they're applying for credit cards all during this process. I had a client 3 days before closing buy an Escalade. So there's a thing that the lenders look for, which is called the DTI, your debt to income ratio. So even though you can physically afford an Escalade payment and the mortgage, the bank looks at it different. So if your mortgage is $700, but your Escalade payment is $800, and you was right at that cuff, yeah, it tilts it sideways. So it's definitely not in your favor to buy anything major. Do not pull your credit unnecessarily, only until after you sign on the dotted line. If you want to buy the Escalade, all for it, go for it. So
just buy it after you close.
Yeah, after you close. But
don't go buy new furniture yet.
No furniture, nothing credit related.
It, nothing.
If you're driving a beat up car during the process, save that money and work on buying the house. That's your number one goal right there. But after you close on a house, then that's when you go shopping for furniture. It's okay to window shop, get your list together, but shopping for credit definitely was going to be red flags for the bank and the lender. That's one. Some of the other pitfalls is not having a home inspection. My core base are first-time buyers and investors as well. I have long-time investors that still have home inspections, so you know exactly what you're getting into. Of course, there's ways to remedy that not having a home inspection, but a competent realtor can advise you on what you should and cannot do. But yeah, that's good. Always have a home inspection. It's definitely worth the money, because that inspection contingency is your get out of jail free card. As long as you have your inspection and provide notice within that allotted time, you can get out of that contract. So that's one of the bigger aspects or biggest downfall or roadblock in a real estate transaction.
Wow. I didn't even know you can go without getting an inspection.
Yeah. I personally, I've been investing in real estate for 11 years, so I buy properties without inspection, but it's for first-time buyers who have not been in the house before, who have not bought a house before. Definitely want to rely upon independent third party, because even though I have my knowledge, I can point you in the right direction. I am not a physical inspection, so I cannot generate a report and give you a concrete written opinion on the condition of a house.
Gotcha. Okay, all right. So those are some things that you guys should avoid doing. All right, so let's say everything goes well. We get to the day of closing. Describe to us what a day of closing is like. We know emotional, it's an amazing feeling, but what actually happens when you go close on a house?
So usually the week before closing is when everything, all the hustle and bustle is coming to a head. So we've passed the inspection contingency, the property appraised out. As far as the appraisal, of course, the appraiser is looking for condition and value. So depending on what type of loan, if you get an FHA loan, there's certain things that the house has to qualify for. Has to have working mechanicals, life and health services issues, meaning working heat, gas, electric, no trip hazards, no peeling paint, stuff like that for FHA. Conventional, they're more lenient on different items. Obviously, we can't paint an exterior of the house in the winter. But as far as the appraisal, that's the next hurdle. Then the financing. And that's from the appraisal to financing is where the lender is doing the most work. My job is to find you the house, negotiate your best deal, make sure that you are in good hands as far as the inspection goes. And so if there's anything that comes up on inspection, of course, we can go back to the negotiating table. If the value is not met on the appraisal, we can go back to the negotiating table. If the financing does not meet up, we can go back to the negotiating table. Those what those contingencies are to protect you as well as the seller. But after those three are satisfied, usually a week before closing, the lender, the realtor, is going to be in contact with you, everybody, the title company, basically planning, preparing, getting all the final documentation together. So they're going to send you a preliminary closing disclosure, which goes over your final numbers, what your monthly payment is going to be, exactly what your monthly payment is going to be, what your escrow account is going to be, what the amount that you need to pay. It comes down to that. So and then the day before closing, we do what is called a final walkthrough to make sure that the property is still in the same condition that you wrote the offer in. Nothing has changed majorly, no fires, nobody moving in. And the day of closing, of course, the realtor reaches out to you, making sure that you're still on, that you didn't buy anything. Jokingly said, hey, you didn't buy any Escalade.
Right.
but confirming the appointments and everything else, that you know exactly that what you need to bring, your ID, that your down payment has been submitted, or you need the amount that you need to bring in with the cashier's check. And you can estimate to spend about maybe 30 minutes to an hour at closing, just signing documents. That's the hardest part, is signing the paperwork. But the feeling of walking into it to buy your own house is, you wouldn't even notice that you're signing all these papers. But it could happen so fast, and then after money changes hands, you get your keys, and then you're officially a homeowner.
Wow.
It's not as hard as it sounds.
Right.
Usually the process to find a good house, basically, of course, you want to shop at least 3 houses, so you at least have a fair comparison. About a week or 2 to find a decent house. So from time of accepted offer to closing, anywhere from 30 to 45 days as far as that process goes.
Okay, good to know. So that may take about 30 to 45 days where you just set aside everything else for a little bit and really buckle down on this. Awesome. All right, final thoughts. Any other advice that you have for our listeners out there who are looking to purchase a home?
Well, purchasing a home is not like buying a car. Of course, there's more emotion involved, so a lot of people make sure that you come up with your needs and wants list. You know, what you need to have in a house when you start looking. Your needs, I need to have a 3-bedroom, I need to have 2 baths, I need to have 1-car garage, 2-car garage, no garage, I need to be close to work, and so that's one thing I would say. But if you are looking stay away from Zillow. Zillow, you take it with a grain of salt, because Zillow will show you the same information, but a lot of information is not accurate. Because if you're on Zillow, you see a list of pre-foreclosures. That's just public records that shows that the seller or owner of the property, because they're not a seller yet, is in default of that mortgage. So when you text your realtor like, hey, Keith, I see this property, I pull it up, I'm like, hey, it's not on the market. The people are behind on their mortgage, so they might not even be able to sell. They can sell it, but right now it's not listed with a realtor. And that's one piece of advice. But the main thing is just having a sound financial plan, making sure that you know where your credit score is, your actual FICO score, which is the mid of your 3 scores. Stay away from Credit Karma, I will say, in my opinion. MyFICO.com is one of the best reliable resources for getting your credit score.
So again, like the most accurate credit score.
Yes, and it doesn't hurt your score to pull your own. So if you go onto myfico.com, you can buy the credit report, and if you do see any negative items on your credit, you can get ahead of the curve instead of having the lender be like, hey, you can't qualify for this because of this collection. But the main thing, if you are not in the credit place that you need to be now, just start working, making sure that you're paying your bills on time. Even if you're making the minimum payment, make sure you make the payment, because your credit will eventually start to repair itself on its own. As long as you're making on-time payments, even if it's the minimum payments, keep your utilization low on your credit cards.
30% or less.
30% or less. Yep, exactly. But yeah, just get into a good credit habit.
Right.
Making sure that you're financially stable.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Washington,
No
for
problem.
joining us. Appreciate it.
No problem at all.
This has been your finance girl, Jaquila Ross, along with Mr. Keith Washington. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to either one of us. I will be sure to post his business page in the comments. All right. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye.